Hello! In the last video, we looked at how realism and later neorealism sees the world and aims to explain how it develops. In this video, we will present quite a different approach, liberalism, and as a more recent version of this trend of theorizing, neoliberalism. Liberalism has a rich tradition. In its political versions, summarizing various different strands of this major theoretical stream, it focuses on aspects and values such as individual liberty, political freedom, and equality. In what is sometimes called Republican liberalism, for example, democracies are believed to be more peaceful than non-democracies. The so-called democratic peace theory even assumes that two democracies will not actually fight each other. Sociological liberalism, by comparison, emphasizes that transnational contexts and coalitions affect national attitudes, interests, and behavior. Aspects of liberalism can also be found extensively, for example, in the principles of neoclassical economics, where the unit of analysis or focus tends to be the firm or the individual. In neoclassical economics, there was a sense that the economy should be as free as possible from political interference. Markets should operate on their own, and an invisible hand would then generally lead to welfare gains for all. There were just a few areas where collective action would fail and where government interference would be needed. This is the case of market failures. In this economic version of liberalism, special emphasis was placed on so-called comparative advantage. This means that every state focuses on the production of certain goods or services that it actually can produce best and cheapest. If all states do this and exchange, this is beneficial to all. Economic liberalism was largely a response to approaches that had emphasized the importance of government interference in markets, such as mercantilism. In the framework of what is at times called commercial liberalism, economic interdependence is believed to allow for the development of peaceful relations between states. Economic liberalism has been extremely influential in most parts of the world, also the last decades. However, in recent years, more concerns have been voiced about the effects of economic liberalism, especially in the aftermath of the global financial crisis. In international relations theory, an adaptation of liberal thought to international relations has been labeled neoliberalism, at times also called neoliberal institutionalism. This tradition shares some of the core principles with realism and neorealism, including the assumption that states are the most important actors and that they are rational. But it differs from them in some other important aspects. Key authors who sparked off the school are Robert Cohen and Joseph Nye, who in 1989 published a world-famous book, Power and Interdependence. In their perspective, next to states, there are many other actors that influence world politics, transnational linkages, and the various patterns of interdependence between states crucially influence the ways in which states behave and conduct their foreign policy. In neoliberalism, like in neorealism, the global system is believed to be anarchic. But states are not seen as the unit of analysis, acting as cohesive entities, but rather as being constituted by a range of different actors. Domestic politics and international institutions shape the priorities of governments and determine their behavior. In addition to this, actors can cooperate across state borders. Multinational corporations and transnational interest groups, for example, are seen as playing a crucial role in terms of shaping the incentives of states to act. International institutions, or what is called regimes, essentially sets of rules, norms, and principles that govern behavior in given issue areas, are seen to affect state behavior. Stefan Krasner has actually defined international regimes as being implicit or explicit principles, norms, rules, and decision-making procedures around which actors' expectations converge in a given area of international relations. In neoliberalism, international institutions are seen as much more important than they are in realism. This is captured, for example, by an influential article published in 1995 by Robert Cohen and Lisa Martin, titled "The Promise of Institutionalist Theory." A link to this article is in our list of assigned readings. Actually, John Mersheimer's article, "The False Promise of International Institutions," which we briefly mentioned in the last video, was an explicit reply to this kind of work. In essence, according to neoliberal institutionalism, institutions affect the ways in which states define their self-interest. Cooperation between states is then possible, partially because of the existence of institutions and what is called regimes, and the effects of reciprocity. Although states may be tempted to break the rules of cooperation, and with this display non-cooperative behavior, institutions can exercise important functions that allow for cooperation. Institutions, for instance, can monitor the behavior of actors, provide information, allow for repeated interaction, for the reduction of transaction costs. They can sanction actors if they display non-cooperative behavior, and with this they create the foundations for long-term stable patterns of cooperative interaction. In this perspective, cooperation and sustainable peace are possible. Neoliberal institutionalists often draw on tools such as game theory to explain patterns of interactions between states. Do you think that cooperation between states is possible also without international institutions? I think it is, but institutions can clearly help create systems and frameworks that increase prospects for states to engage in cooperative behavior, also over longer time spans. Neoliberal institutionalists sometimes mention European integration as an example of such patterns, with its rich and dense network of institutional structures. In essence, then, the work of neoliberal institutionalists can be seen as a reaction to realism and neorealism, schools of thought they believe are being too pessimistic in terms of explaining the behavior of states, and notably their assumptions regarding the likelihood that cooperation between states can occur. Robert Cohen, however, sees himself more as what he calls a rational institutionalist, because he also believes that some of the realist assumptions are actually relevant and very useful. He has criticized neorealism, but seen this more as an attempt to adapt the theory rather to reject it entirely. According to neoliberalism, international institutions will not simply be reflections of the interests of the most powerful actors in the global system. Clearly, the preferences of such actors will matter, but they, like smaller or medium-sized countries, are constrained in their behavior by their embedding into networks of international or regional institutions or regimes. In fact, international institutions are believed to be able to crucially influence the behavior of states in the global system. Interdependence between states, according to this school of thought, does not create dependence and with this a fear of gaining less than others in relative terms, but it adds to the prospects for stability and peace over time. In fact, we could see a project like European integration in the light of this theory. After World War II, former enemies such as Germany and France integrated some of the most important sectors of their economy at the time, coal and steel. This economic interdependence created the foundations for a long-lasting pattern of stability and peace among what today is the European Union. Moreover, the theory would argue that the European integration process has led to the establishment of institutions that have further stimulated the integration process, and that they do not simply reflect the preferences and power of its most important member states. Summarizing, liberalism has a rich tradition in terms of both its political and its economic features. Political liberalism emphasizes values such as individual liberty, political rights, equality, human freedom, and democracy. Economic strands of liberalism focus on the importance of markets, the benefits of trade, and the need to keep markets as free as possible from government interference. Neoliberalism, or neoliberal institutionalism, as it is also called, emphasize the role of a range of different actors on the domestic and the international level, including transnational actors in terms of constraining and shaping the behavior of states. In this theoretical school of thought, international institutions do matter. In the next video, we will investigate a third major theory which differs in terms of quite a few aspects from realism and liberalism, that of constructivism.